The skies of Caloris blazed with apocalyptic fury that night, a searing spectacle etched into Darren Holt's memory, as though it had happened mere hours ago, not a decade past. At 26, he was a soldier of Terra Command thrust into a war not of his making, following orders shrouded in mystery. The orbital bombardment painted the heavens in strokes of molten orange and inky black, the air heavy with ash and the acrid tang of scorched metal. Hostiles advancing on your six. Halt! The voice in his helmet crackled urgent and mechanical. Clear the sector and fall back to extraction point. Darren adjusted his thermal scope, his boots sinking into the alien soil, its faint blue hue glowing eerily under the firelight. His squad had been scattered in the chaos of the assault, leaving him alone on the smoldering outskirts of a Kaorani royal outpost. Copy that. He muttered the words more reflex than conviction. The weight of his pulse rifle pressed into his palms, its carbon fiber grip slick with sweat, despite the suit's climate controls. Terra Command hadn't prepared them for this, a conflict where the enemy's ferocity outmatched their intel. The Kaorani, with their advanced technology and unyielding resolve, defied every briefing. A sudden flare erupted to his left, a ship plummeting from orbit, its breached hull trailing fire like a dying star. It wasn't military, its sleek, ornate design screamed royalty, likely a desperate evacuation attempt before the sector fell. The crash less than a kilometer away sent tremors through the ground, jarring Darren's boots. His HUD flickered as the suit countered the electromagnetic pulse. New contact, the AI in his helmet intoned. Royal-class vessel down. Sweeping for survivors. Recommend immediate elimination of all hostiles. Darren knew the protocol, no survivors. Kaorani royalty weren't dangerous for their strength, but for their political leverage. A single hostage could shift the war's tide. Yet something held him back. Hostile signature detected 200 meters northeast. Recommend immediate neutralization. His grip tightened on the rifle as he moved through the burning underbrush, alien foliage crackling beneath his tread. The wreckage loomed ahead, a twisted heap of metal. Its once elegant hull split open like a silver bloom in the night. Flames danced across its surface, casting fleeting glimpses of a lavish interior. Then he saw her, a small figure stumbling from the debris. His thermal scope marked her as Kaorani, her cooler body temperature, painting a bluish silhouette. But she wasn't an adult. She was a girl no older than 8, her deep blue skin betraying royal lineage, her silver hair catching the fire's glow. Hostile confirmed, the AI droned. Royal bloodline detected. Eliminate immediately. Darren's finger hovered over the trigger. She hadn't seen him yet, clutching her burned arm, her small face contorted with pain and fear. Hostile is wounded and poses no immediate threat, the AI persisted. Clean shot available. Eliminate immediately. She's a child, Darren whispered, his voice barely audible over the roar of flames. Irrelevant. Royal bloodline confirmed. Execute primary directive. The girl turned, then her silver eyes liquid mercury in the firelight locking onto his across the scorched field. Fear widened her gaze, but she didn't flee. Perhaps she couldn't. She stood fragile and defiant, awaiting her fate. Darren lowered his weapon. Overriding primary directive, the AI warned. Recalibrating threat assessment. Hostile must be eliminated. Override denied. He said, his voice steady with resolve. He disabled the targeting system and approached her slowly. She didn't move, didn't recoil. Up close, he saw the intricate royal insignia on her tattered clothing, confirming the AI's cold assessment. Her arm was blistered raw, blue skin, weeping under the burns. At a few meters distance, she spoke a single word, Solon. The word didn't register in his suit's translation matrix, too ancient, too personal. I'm not going to hurt you, Darren said, unsure if she understood. He knelt to her level, setting his rifle aside in a gesture he hoped transcended language. The firelight illuminated her tear-streaked face, silver eyes reflecting both terror and a flicker of trust. I need to get you somewhere safe, he said, glancing at the wreckage. Is anyone else with you? Her gaze darted to the burning ship, then back to him, silent but heavy with meaning. Darren Holt, he said, pointing to himself. That's my name. She studied him, then reached out with her uninjured hand, touching the name tag on his armored chest. Holt, she echoed, her accent turning the word into a soft melody. Yeah, that's right. He smiled behind his visor, a warmth cutting through the chaos. Let's get you somewhere safe, his comms crackled. Holt, what's your status? Extraction in 10 minutes. Get to the rendezvous point. He ignored the call, silencing the AI's incessant warnings flashing across his HUD. Hesitating only a moment, he lifted the girl into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, her small frame trembling against his armor. I'm taking you to the neutral zone, he told her, knowing she likely couldn't understand. They'll help you there. He moved eastward toward the civilian safe zone kilometers away. Her silver eyes stayed fixed on the receding wreckage reflecting the dying flames. What followed unfolded in fragments like a fevered dream. A second explosion rocked the crash site. Radio chatter surged in his helmet. The girl clung tighter to his armor. Then came the hum of approaching aircraft, not Terra Command but Kairani. A royal rescue vessel, sleek and undamaged, descended into a clearing. Darren set her down gently, stepping back as armed guards emerged, their weapons trained on him. Her silver eyes met his one last time, a fleeting connection before her people whisked her aboard. The aftermath was brutal. A reprimand, a disciplinary hearing, a dishonorable discharge. Terra Command had no patience for soldiers who defied orders, especially those who let a royal slip through their grasp. Yet Darren never regretted it, not once in 10 years. Now wiping grease from his hands in his cramped repair shop on Ashar Verge, he stared at the scattered engine parts on his workbench, wondering about the blue-skinned girl with silver eyes. Had she survived the war? Did she remember the human who spared her? Or was she just another ghost of a conflict that ended in a brittle, bitter peace he'd likely never know? And that was okay. He'd made his choice under those burning skies, and he'd make it again. The bell above his shop door chimed, snapping him back to the present. Hey, Darren. Tova'ara's voice rang out, her tentacled appendages balancing a tray of steaming cups. The Vexillari mechanic, his friend, since he settled on Ashar Verge 8 years ago, grinned. Thought you could use a pick-me-up. You've been wrestling that converter for 3 hours. Has it been that long? Darren took a cup, savoring the bitter, coffee-like aroma of the station's brew. Thanks. Tova'ara perched on a stool, her skin shifting to a thoughtful amber, her large eyes blinking sideways. You were doing it again, she said. That far-off stare. War memories. Something like that, he admitted, sipping the drink. You ever think about Earth? She asked, her tentacles gesturing toward the engine parts. Darren shook his head. Nothing for me there. Fair enough, she nodded at the table. So can you fix old Ferguson's ship, or what? I can fix anything, Darren said with a half-smile. It's people that stay broken. Before Tovar could reply, a deep rumble shook the station, freezing their cups midair. That wasn't a docking, Tavara said, her skin paling to a nervous yellow. Darren was already at the viewport, peering into Ashar Verge's central docking bay. A massive ship settled onto the platform, its curved silver-violet hull shimmering with an otherworldly glow. Kairani, he whispered. Not just any Kairani, Tova'ara said, her voice tight as she joined him. That's a royal vessel. Such ships, symbols of imperial might, hadn't ventured beyond Kairani space since the war. Their presence at a neutral hub like Ashar Verge was unheard of. What are they doing here? Darren muttered. The answer came swiftly. The station's announcement system crackled. Attention residents and visitors of Ashar Verge. A diplomatic delegation from the Kairani Empire has arrived. All citizens must gather in the Central Plaza for an announcement. This is mandatory. Repeat, all citizens to the Central Plaza immediately. Darren and Tovara exchanged wary glances. Mandatory. Tovara's skin rippled with anxiety. They can't enforce that. This is a neutral station. Darren knew better, neutrality bent under imperial weight. We should go, he said, grabbing his jacket. Best not to stand out. The cramped corridors of Ashar Verge buzzed with hundreds of residents, humans, Vexillari Tori, and countless others streaming toward the plaza, their murmurs thick with unease. The Central Plaza, a vast circle beneath a transparent dome, offered a stunning view of the stars, and the gas giant Ashar Verge orbited. By the time they arrived, it was packed. Kairani guards, their ornate armor gleaming, stood like sentinels along the perimeter, their presence silencing the crowd. I don't like this, Tovara whispered, pressing closer to Darren. He didn't reply, his gaze fixed on the docking bay entrance where a procession emerged. First came more guards, their armor, even more elaborate, followed by officials with blue skin ranging from pale to deep indigo, marking their ranks. Then, flanked by an honor guard of 12, a figure stepped forward, silencing the plaza. She was tall, her deep blue skin radiating royal lineage, her silver hair cascading in intricate braids woven with liquid metal. Her violet armor etched with silver gleamed with every movement. But it was her face that seized Darren's breath, regal cold with high cheekbones and silver eyes that held the chill of deep space. Queen Arathea of the Kairani Empire. An official announced, his voice resonating across the plaza. Sovereign of the Seven Systems, protector of the ancient lines, bearer of the eternal flame. A chill coursed through Darren. It couldn't be her. The girl he'd saved would be barely 18 now. Not this commanding figure radiating authority. Yet those silver eyes, Arathea stepped forward, her voice clear and commanding, laced with a faint melodic accent. People of Asher Verge, she began. I come not as a conqueror, but as a sovereign seeking truth. For too long, our empires have clung to a fragile peace, built on half-truths and buried secrets. Today, that changes. Her gaze swept the crowd, and for a fleeting moment, Darren felt it linger on him, impossible surely his imagination. I seek one among you, she continued, a man who once wore the uniform of Terra Command, who in the war's final days made a choice that reshaped history, though he knows it not. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Darren's pulse quickened. I seek Darren Holt, Arathea declared. Let him come forward and stand before me. The murmurs turned to a buzz, heads swiveling, searching. Tavara's grip tightened on his arm, her skin now a pale, frightened blue. Darren, she hissed, what did you do? He couldn't answer, his mind reeling. How did she know his name? Could she truly be the girl from that night? And why, after all these years, was she calling him now? Arathea's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts, sharp and undeniable. I know you are here, Darren Holt. Queen Arathea's voice rang out sharp and commanding, laced with an authority that brooked no defiance. I feel your presence. Step forward now. Her words carried a weight that stirred Darren before he could fully process his decision. Gently freeing himself from Tovara's anxious grip, he wove through the murmuring crowd, their eyes tracking his every step. As he neared the queen and her regal entourage, a flicker crossed her silver eyes, recognition perhaps, or something deeper, unreadable. He halted a few meters away, acutely aware of his grease-stained mechanic's clothes. His face smudged from the day's work, standing in stark contrast to her resplendent violet armor. Darren Holt, she said, her voice softening with a strange intimacy, as if savoring his name after a decade of silence. Yes, he replied, his tone steady but guarded. Arathea studied him, her face a regal mask, impenetrable yet magnetic. Then with deliberate precision, she issued a single command, kneel. The word hung heavy in the air, charged with unspoken implications. The plaza fell into absolute silence, the crowd holding its breath, waiting for his response. Darren felt the weight of countless gazes, Karani guards, their hands inching toward weapons. Advisors frozen in anticipation. 10 years ago, he'd made a choice that cost him everything: his career, his home, his place in Terra Command. He'd saved a child when orders demanded her death, choosing humanity over duty. Now another choice loomed. The last time someone told me to kneel, he said, his voice clear and resolute, cutting through the stillness, I dragged their entire unit through the mud. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Karani guards advanced, hands now gripping their weapons, but Arathea raised a single hand, halting them instantly. For a fleeting moment, a spark of amusement danced across her regal features before the imperial mask returned. Escort Darren Holt to my ship, she commanded, her tone unwavering. We have much to discuss. As the guards closed in around him, Darren caught Tovara's terrified gaze in the crowd. He offered a small nod, part reassurance, part farewell, before letting himself be led away. Arathea turned, her silver hair catching the starlight, and strode toward her vessel, leaving Darren to follow in her wake, as he once carried a small, blue-skinned girl from the flames of war. The interior of the Kairani royal vessel was a far cry from the stark utilitarian ships Darren had known during the war. Here, opulence met cutting-edge technology in a breathtaking fusion. Wide corridors stretched beneath high ceilings adorned with constellations as crafted from precious metals, glinting like captured stars. The walls pulsed with soft, violet light, shifting subtly to match the movements of those within. Guards guided him through increasingly ornate passageways until they reached a private chamber, stark in its simplicity compared to the ship's grandeur. A vast viewport dominated one wall, framing Ashar Verge and the swirling gas giant beyond. A few pieces of furniture carved from materials Darren couldn't name stood elegantly around the room. Wait here, a guard instructed before they withdrew, leaving him alone. Darren approached the viewport, watching shuttles dart between the station and the planet below, their routines undisturbed despite the royal ship's disruptive arrival. A soft hiss announced the doors opening behind him. "You haven't changed as much as I thought." Arethia's voice came warm, yet commanding. Darren turned to find her in the doorway, her ceremonial armor shed for simpler, yet still regal violet robes. She looked younger without the trappings of state, though no less formidable. "I could say the same," he replied cautiously, "but that'd be a lie." A faint smile touched her lips. "True. I've changed a great deal. You were a child then. Now you're a queen. I was a soldier. Now I'm a mechanic." She glided into the room, her movements graceful, deliberate. "We all adapt to survive. Is that what this is about?" Darren asked, probing. "Survival?" She regarded him thoughtfully, in a manner of speaking. When she didn't elaborate, he pressed further. "How did you find me?" "Finding you was never the challenge," she said, her voice calm but weighted. "I've known your whereabouts for years. The question was when to reach out." The revelation sent a chill through him. "You've been watching me." "Not personally," she clarified, gesturing to a seat. "Please sit. This will be easier if we're both at ease." Darren remained standing. "I'll stand, thanks." Her silver eyes narrowed slightly, but she nodded, seating herself with practiced elegance. "As you wish. To answer your unspoken question," she continued, "yes, I am the girl you saved on Caloris. The child you carried from the wreckage when your orders and your AI demanded my death." "How do you know what my AI said?" Darren asked, his voice low. "Because its voice haunts my nightmares," she said simply, her gaze unflinching. "Eliminate immediately," it said over and over while you defied it. "I remember every detail of that night, Darren Holt, every moment." "And yet it took you 10 years to say thank you," he observed, his tone edged with skepticism. Her expression hardened. "Is that what you think this is, a belated thank you?" "I don't know what this is," he admitted. "That's why I'm asking." Arethea rose, stepping closer until he could see the intricate swirls of darker blue beneath her skin, like currents in a midnight sea. "What do you know of Kairani politics?" she asked, shifting topics abruptly. Caught off guard, Darren replied. "Not much. You're ruled by a monarchy. Your people keep humans at arm's length since the war. Trade's minimal but stable. A simple but fair summary," she acknowledged. "What you don't know, what few beyond our inner circles know, is that my throne is fragile. I ascended only 2 years ago after my father's death. Many High Lords see me as too young, too open to other species. And what does that have to do with me?" Everything, she said, her voice alight with intensity. "The tale of my survival, pulled from my father's burning ship, is a legend among my people. A royal child spared from war's flames to claim the throne. But one detail was erased. Darren's understanding crystallized. The part where a human soldier saved you." "Exactly," she confirmed. "Admitting an enemy showed mercy when our propaganda painted your kind as ruthless killers or inconvenient. Now my opponents question my survival itself, whispering, 'I wasn't on that ship, that I'm not the true heir.'" Her silver eyes flashed with anger. "They seek to undermine my rule with Dawood. And you need me to confirm your story," Darren said, the absurdity hitting him. A mechanic from a backwater station thrust into the heart of an empire that once sought to annihilate his kind. "To be your proof, yes," she said plainly. "I need you to testify before the High Council to recount that night and prove I am who I claim to be." "And if I refuse?" he asked. Her posture shifted, a subtle tension coiling. "I could compel you, bring you to Caloris by force." "You could try," he countered, meeting her gaze. The air crackled with unspoken challenge, electric and taut. For a moment, he thought she might summon her guards. Then, unexpectedly, she turned to the viewport, her back to him. "I'd rather not resort to that," she said softly. "Not with you." "Why me?" Darren pressed. "Others saw you that night, your rescue party, the medics." "All Karani," she replied, facing him again. "All vulnerable to political sway. You're the only neutral witness, the only one whose words can't be dismissed as blind loyalty." Darren gave a bitter laugh. "Neutral, I'm human. Our war killed millions. Your people tried to glass my homeworld. My testimony would be thrown out before I could say my name. Not if you come as my personal guest," she countered. "Not if you speak under the ancient right of truth-telling." The what, a sacred tradition, she explained. Even the staunchest lords must honor it. A witness who invokes it cannot lie without grave consequences. What kind of consequences? The kind that end in death, she said bluntly. Darren shook his head. You're asking me to risk my life for Korani politics after your people tried to wipe out mine. I am not my ancestors, she snapped, her eyes blazing. Nor am I the lords who cling to their hatred. I seek a different path for my people. Convenient now that you need me, he shot back. Her gaze burned with defiance. You know nothing of what I've endured, what I've fought for. You saved me once, yes, but don't presume that gives you the right to judge me. Darren held her stare unflinching. I'm not judging. I'm asking why I should risk my neck for your empire's games. Silence stretched between them, heavy with history's weight. Then with deliberate grace, Arethea drew a small object from a hidden pocket. Do you recognize this? She asked, holding it out. It was a knife, its dark metal blade absorbing light, its simple handle familiar. As she turned it, Darren saw his name etched into the blade. Where did you get that? He asked, his voice hoarse. From you, she said softly. You used it to bind my burns with a piece of your uniform. You left it behind when my people came. The memory surged back, the standard issue Terra Command knife forgotten in the chaos. I've carried it every day since, she continued, a reminder of an enemy who chose mercy over hatred, whose compassion reshaped my life. She offered it to him handle first. I'm not asking you to risk your life for Kaurani politics, Darren Holt. I'm asking you to help me forge a future where such acts are the norm, not the exception. Darren stared at the knife, then at her face, where traces of the frightened child lingered beneath the queen's resolve. Slowly he took it, feeling its weight familiar, yet heavy with new meaning. I can't promise anything, he said finally, but I'll hear you out. Relief flickered across her features. That's all I ask, she said, moving toward the door. Rest now. Tomorrow we'll discuss the details. As she reached the threshold, Darren called after her. You never told me what it means. Solon, the word you spoke that night. She paused, glancing back, her expression softening, revealing a glimpse of the child she'd been. It's an ancient Korani word, she said quietly. It means hope that hurts. With that, she was gone, leaving Darren alone with the knife and a tide of memories, old and new, crashing over him. Darren sat by the viewport, the stars a silent audience, as he turned the knife over in his hands, its dark blade etched with his name, a relic of alien metal that had endured a decade of history. What did it signify? What burdens did it place upon him? The chime at his door broke his reverie, signaling morning or its spacecraft equivalent. A Kaurani servant entered, bowing with quiet deference. Her Majesty requests your presence for the morning meal, the servant said. I will escort you when you are ready. Darren had been provided with fresh attire, simple yet finely crafted in human styles woven from Korani fabrics that glided unnaturally smooth against his skin. He dressed swiftly and followed the servant through the ship's luminous corridors. The dining chamber was intimate, designed for private moments rather than grand state affairs. Arethea was already seated, her presence commanding despite a more practical outfit, still regal, but geared for action over ceremony. Darren, she greeted, her silver eyes warm yet piercing. I trust you rested well. Well enough, he replied, taking the seat she indicated across from her. No attendants lingered, an unusual privacy for a royal meal, he noted. Please eat, she invited. I've had earth dishes prepared, though they may not be perfect. Our chefs aren't well versed in your cuisine. Darren surveyed the table. Most dishes were unmistakably Kaurani, though a few mimicked earth-fare bread-like forms, fruits that teased familiarity. Thank you, he said, choosing the least alien options. They ate in silence, the soft clink of utensils against plates, the only sound breaking the stillness. Then Arethea set down her implements, her silver gaze locking onto him. You have questions, she stated, as if reading his thoughts. Several, Darren admitted, starting with why you made such a spectacle of summoning me yesterday. A private envoy would have been quieter. She nodded as if expecting this. I needed your importance to be undeniable. A secret meeting bringing you to Caloris without witnesses would have let my enemies claim I fabricated your story. So it was theater, Darren said, piecing it together. Making sure everyone saw you call me out. Politics often demands a stage, she admitted, unapologetic. But it served another purpose. By claiming you publicly, I've ensured that any harm to you is an attack on the crown itself. You're protecting me, Darren realized the weight of her words settling in. As you once protected me, she replied, her voice soft but resolute. He sipped from his cup, the liquid a strange blend of tea-like warmth and alien notes. You mentioned opponents yesterday. Who are we up against? Lord Care Xanthor, she said, her tone icing over. My father's former advisor, now the head of the traditionalist faction in the High Council. He believes the treaty with Earth was a mistake, that we should have fought until total victory. Charming, Darren muttered. He opposed my ascension from the star, she continued. He sees a female sovereign as weak, too prone to compromise. My push for trade and diplomacy with former enemies only fuels his descent. And he's the one questioning your identity, your right to rule. Yes, she said, her face a mask of control, though fury simmered beneath. He claims the true princess perished in that crash, that I'm an impostor groomed to steal the throne. He can't attack my policies. They've succeeded, so he targets my legitimacy instead. And my testimony would crush his claims. Darren finished. Precisely. She leaned forward, her intensity palpable. The High Council meets in 3 days for its quarterly session. All major lords will attend. That's when I want you to speak. Darren set down his cup. You're moving fast. Xanthor's faction grows bolder daily, she said. He studied her, sensing more. What aren't you telling me? This isn't just about proving who you are. A flicker of surprise crossed her face, quickly masked. You're perceptive, she said. 10 years reading people from a dozen species teaches you to spot when someone's holding back, he replied. She weighed her words carefully. What do you know of Kaiorani's succession laws? Nothing, he admitted. They're ancient, complex, she explained, gesturing to her deep blue skin, the mark of royal blood. For millennia, this was enough to prove lineage. But now, let me guess, Darren cut in, technology's changed the game. Someone could fake the traits with genetic modification. Exactly, she confirmed. Now succession hinges on witnessed history, documented lineage. If Xanthor casts enough doubt on my identity, he can force a succession challenge. And then a regency period while they investigate, she said, her expression darkening. Xanthor, as the highest-ranking lord, would act as regent, controlling all state and military power. And you think he'd use it to restart the war? Darren asked, the pieces clicking into place. I know he would, she said flatly. He's said as much in private councils. He sees humans as a threat to be eradicated, not allies. The implications hit like a shockwave. After a decade of fragile peace, a second war between Earth and the Kairani Empire would be catastrophic, millions more lost. So this isn't just about your throne, Darren said. It's about stopping another war. Yes, she replied, her silver eyes unwavering. That's why I need you, Darren Holt, not just as a witness to my identity, but as a symbol of what peace between our peoples could be. The weight of her words settled on him like a physical burden, a call far beyond a personal favor. This was a pivot point for billions across the stars. What exactly would I need to do? He asked. Face the High Council, she explained. Invoke the right of truth-telling. Testify about that night on Caloris, confirm I'm the child you saved. And this truth-telling right, how does it work? She hesitated. It involves the Verathar serum. It ensures truth but causes intense pain if you try to lie. Mind-altering drugs, Darren said dryly. That's comforting. It's not a drug as you know it, she corrected. It forms a temporary psychic link between you and the council. They'll feel your emotions, see your memories as you share them. They'll be in my head, Darren said, standing abruptly. No way, only for the memories you choose, she assured him. You control what you reveal. That's not the issue, he argued. You're asking me to let Karani lords, including one who wants to wipe out my species, dig through my mind. How do I know they won't pull out military secrets, defense codes I don't even know I know? Arythea rose, facing him across the table. Because I'll be linked to you too, she said quietly. I'll feel every intrusion. If they cross the boundaries of the right, I'll know. And you'd stop them. I'd die before I let that happen, she said with such conviction that Darren almost believed her. Almost. This is insane, he said, pacing away. You're asking too much. I'm asking what's necessary. She countered, her voice firm. No more, no less. He turned back. Why should I trust you? Beyond the fact I saved you once, why believe anything you're saying? For the first time, uncertainty flickered in her silver eyes as if she were weighing a monumental decision. Come with me, she said finally. There's something you need to see. She led him deeper into the ship, through security checkpoints where guards bowed low as she passed. At last, they reached a sealed door that opened only to her palm on a scanner. This is my private archive, she said as they entered. No one else has access. The room was smaller than he'd expected, its walls lined with rare physical books, a marvel for a civilization advanced enough for interstellar travel. At its center, a pedestal held a single object in a transparent case, a charred, blood-stained piece of fabric. Is that, Darren began. A piece of your uniform, she confirmed. The one you used to bind my wounds. He approached slowly, recognizing the gray-green of Terra command gear, its insignia still faintly visible. You kept it, he whispered. All these years, it was my first lesson in mercy, she said, standing beside him. In seeing beyond species, beyond borders, in knowing compassion can exist between enemies. She faced him directly. My entire reign is built on that principle, Darren. Every trade agreement, every cultural exchange, every reparation for my ancestors' war crimes, they all stem from that moment. I didn't know about the reparations, he admitted. Few do, she said. The traditionalists suppress public announcements, but the funds have reached Earth's colonies for years. She gestured to the room. I've studied your people, your culture. I believe lasting peace is possible, but only if we face our past honestly and move forward together. Darren looked from the fabric to her face, seeing both the resolute queen and the echo of the frightened child. Both were true. If I do this, he said slowly, if I testify, what happens after? Do I just go back to my shop on Asher Verge and act like nothing happened? Something disappointment flickered in her eyes. If that's your wish, you'd be well compensated. I don't want your money, he said sharply. Then what do you want, Darren Holt? She asked, her voice soft but probing. The question caught him off guard. What did he want? His life on Ashar Verge was simple, his own, yet it felt hollow, lacking purpose he rarely dared to name. I don't know, he admitted, but I don't want another war. Understanding softened her gaze. Then help me prevent one. Darren looked at the fabric again, proof of a moment that had reshaped their lives, a choice born in fire now echoing across a decade. I'll do it, he said at last. I'll testify. But I want your word when this is done, I'm free. No strings, no politics, no parading me as the human who saved the queen. You have my word, she promised, relief clear in her voice. Once the council accepts your testimony, you can return to your life. I won't call on you again. Darren hoped he wouldn't regret this. As they left the archive, returning to the ship's public areas, a quiet certainty settled over him. Nothing would ever be the same. Later, as the ship prepared to depart for Caloris, Darren requested permission to message Tovara. To his surprise, Arethia granted it without hesitation. Your friend has been quite concerned, she said. She's been probing official channels since you left. That's Tovara, Darren said with a faint smile. She's relentless. A fine quality in a friend, Arethia observed. The communication suite is ready for you to contact Ashar Verge. The suite was a marvel, its holographic interfaces responding to the slightest gesture. Darren recorded a brief message assuring Tovara he was safe and would be gone for a short while on personal business, keeping the details vague to spare her worry. Darren kept his message to Tovara brief, vaguely describing his absence as personal business, withholding details of Caloris or the Queen's summons. He wasn't sure she'd believe the truth, and he didn't want to deepen her worry. As he finished recording, a tall Kegarani in a crisp military uniform strode into the communication suite, his expression radiating hostility, unlike the other guards Darren had encountered. Human, the officer spat the word, dripping with contempt. I am General Arveth, head of Her Majesty's personal guard. Darren Holt, Darren replied evenly, meeting the general's glare. But you already knew that. Arveth's eyes narrowed, his posture rigid, making him seem to tower despite their similar height. I know exactly who you are and what you claim to have done. I'm not claiming anything, Darren said, rising to face him unflinched. I'm just telling the truth. The truth, Arveth's voice was laced with skepticism. We'll see what truth surfaces under the Varathar serum. Is there something specific you want? General Darren asked, his patience thinning. Or are you just here to scowl? Arveth stepped closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. I came to warn you, the Queen may believe your story, your so-called humanity. I don't share her trust. If you try to exploit this, if you bring any harm to Her Majesty or the Empire, I will end you myself, noted Darren replied, refusing to be cowed. Anything else? Arveth studied him a moment longer, then said, "We depart for Caloris in 1 hour. Be ready." With that, he turned and left. Darren lingered in the suite, grappling with the surreal shift of the past day, from a mechanic on Ashar Verge to a potential linchpin in Kairani politics. The thought was dizzying. A movement at the doorway caught his eye. Arethea stood there, her expression unreadable, silver eyes assessing him quietly. "I see you've met General Arveth," she said, stepping inside. "Charming fellow," Darren replied dryly, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "He's loyal to a fault," she said, her tone measured as she entered the room. "He lost family in the war. His distrust of humans runs deep. And yet you put him in charge of your safety," Darren noted. "Precisely because of that distrust," she explained. "He sees threats everywhere, expects the worst from everyone. It makes him an exceptional protector." "And what does he think of your plan for me?" "He thinks I'm naive," she admitted, her voice tinged with candor. "That I'm letting sentiment cloud my strategy." "Are you—" Darren asked the question, slipping out before he could stop it. She considered it seriously, her silver eyes searching his face. "Perhaps," she said at last, "but I believe empathy has a place in governance. It's not weakness no matter what Arveth or Xanthor think." In this private moment, stripped of ceremonial grandeur, she seemed less like a queen and more authentic, her regal facade giving way to something rawer. Darren studied her, seeing her anew. "How old are you?" he asked suddenly, surprising even himself. Her brows lifted slightly. "Really?" She smiled faintly. "I'm 28 in Earth years, young for a Korani sovereign. Our kind live longer, often 2 centuries or more." The math didn't align, but that would have made you 18 when I found you, not 8. Her smile deepened, a rare softness in her expression. "Korani mature differently. I was physically a child then, though older in years than I seem to you. So when you took the throne 2 years ago—" "I was 26, she confirmed. "Barely an adult by our standards. Many thought me too young, too untested. My father didn't expect to die so soon. I wasn't ready." The vulnerability in her words pierced the royal mask, revealing the person beneath. For the first time, Darren saw her not as a symbol or a ruler, but as someone shaped by loss and duty. "No one's ever ready to lead an empire," he said quietly. "No," she agreed, her voice soft. "But some are born expecting it. I wasn't. I was the third child never meant for the throne. My brothers were groomed for succession when the war began. They died in its early days." "I'm sorry," Darren said, meaning it. She acknowledged his words with a slight nod, her gaze distant. "Their deaths changed everything. Overnight, I became the heir. My education shifted from arts and philosophy to politics and strategy. My father grew obsessed with protecting me. Hence the royal ship evacuating you that night," Darren said, the pieces falling into place. "Yes," she said, her eyes clouded with memory. "We were meant to reach a safe haven in the outer systems, but Terra Command broke our defenses faster than we anticipated. And when you returned, when they learned a human saved you, it became a state secret." "Exactly," she confirmed. "Admitting an enemy showed mercy would have unraveled our propaganda, which painted humans as merciless killers. My father sealed all records, swore all witnesses to silence." "But you remembered," Darren said. "I remembered everything," she replied, her voice low but fierce. "Your face, your name, the way you defied your orders to save me. It changed me, made me question everything I'd been taught about humans, about the war. And now Xanthor's using that against you." "He suspects the truth," she said. "He has no proof, but he senses my policies of reconciliation come from personal experience. He calls me a human sympathizer in council meetings, as if it's the worst insult. To him, it probably is," Darren noted. "Indeed," she said, straightening, her openness receding behind her regal bearing. "We depart for Caloris shortly. The journey will take about 16 hours. Rest and prepare yourself." She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "Thank you, Darren Holt," she said softly. "Not just for what you did 10 years ago, but for what you're doing now." Before he could respond, she was gone, leaving him with a tangle of questions and the unshakable sense that he was stepping into a web far more intricate than he'd imagined. The journey to Caloris blurred into a whirlwind of preparation. Arethea sent advisors to brief Darren on Korani court protocols, the High Council's structure, and the complexities of the truth-telling rite. In 16 hours, he absorbed more about Khairani politics than most humans had gleaned in decades of diplomacy. One truth stood out. Erithia's throne was far more precarious than she'd let on. Lord Khazanthor's traditionalist faction wielded immense power controlling key military posts and resource-rich territories. They tolerated her rule to avoid civil war, but they worked tirelessly to erode her authority. Darren's testimony wasn't just about proving her identity, it was a calculated strike to shift the balance of power in her favor. If the High Council validated her legitimacy under the truth-telling rite, Xanthor's strongest weapon would be neutralized. No wonder the stakes were sky high. No wonder General Arveth watched him with such suspicion. As the ship neared Caloris, Darren was summoned to the observation deck. Erithia stood alone before a vast viewport gazing at her homeworld, its deep blues and purples swirling with white clouds, its oceans shimmering like liquid metal. From orbit, its cities sparkled like scattered jewels. "It's beautiful," Darren said, joining her. "Yes," she agreed, her voice soft. "Though I suspect it looks different through your eyes." "Probably," he admitted. "Last time I saw it, I was peering through a targeting scope." Her expression turned grave. "We're entering a different battlefield now," Darren, one where words and memories are weapons and the stakes rival any war, I understand. "Do you—" She studied him intently, her silver eyes searching. "Once we land, you'll be the Empire's focus. Every Lord official and citizen with media access will scrutinize your every word, every gesture. Xanthor will seize on any flaw, any hesitation to discredit you." "I know what I saw," Darren said firmly. "I know what I did. That won't change. It's not just about facts," she pressed. "It's about how they're perceived, how you present them. Xanthor is a master manipulator. He'll twist your words to make your actions seem selfish or trivial." "Let him try," Darren replied, his voice steady. "I've faced worse." She opened her mouth to say more, but the ship's comm system interrupted. "Your Majesty, we're beginning our descent. The High Council has been notified and awaits your arrival." "Acknowledged," she replied, then turned to Darren. "It begins." The royal vessel glided through Caloris's atmosphere with eerie grace, its advanced technology smoothing what should have been a jarring entry. As they pierced the cloud layer, Darren glimpsed the Khairani capital in peacetime, a city unlike any on Earth. Its buildings seemed to grow organically from the landscape, their flowing curves blending with the terrain. Materials resembling glass, yet impossibly delicate, caught the system's starlight, casting prismatic patterns across the cityscape. They landed on a platform extending from a colossal structure dominating the skyline, its angular design stark against the city's fluid grace. "The citadel of eternal radiance," Erithia said, noting his gaze. "Built 5,000 years ago during our first dynasty, it remains the heart of our power." A delegation awaited them, officials in ornate robes, guards in ceremonial armor, and at the center a tall Khairani male whose presence radiated authority. His lighter blue skin and closely cropped silver hair marked him as distinct. "Lord Khazanthor," Erithia said quietly. "My father's advisor, now my chief rival." Even from a distance, Darren sensed the man's calculating intensity, his rigid posture screaming unshakable confidence in his own superiority. "Remember," Erithia whispered as the ship's ramp lowered, "from this moment, every word, every action matters. We're on his ground now." Darren nodded, bracing himself for what lay ahead. As they descended the ramp together, the symbolism struck him, a Khairani queen and a human soldier side by side stepping into the heart of an empire that had once sought to annihilate his kind. Xanthor advanced, offering an elaborate bow that somehow conveyed respect for her title while subtly dismissing her person. "Your Majesty," he said, his deep voice resonating, "the High Council welcomes your return. Your sudden departure to Ashar Verge surprised us." "Did it, Lord Xanthor?" Erithia replied coolly. "I believe my intentions were clear in our last meeting." "Indeed," he said, his gaze shifting to Darren, eyes narrowing. "Though many question the wisdom of seeking a human witness at this juncture. This must be the soldier you spoke of." "This is Darren Holt," Queen Erithia declared, her voice steady and resonant, cutting through the tense air of the landing platform. "And he makes no claims, only speaks the truth, a value I know you hold dear, Lord Xanthor." The subtle emphasis on truth rippled through the gathered officials, a quiet challenge not lost on anyone. Lord Khazanthor's expression tightened, a flicker of irritation betraying his composed facade before he inclined his head toward Darren. Mr. Holt, he said, the formal address laced with a venom that made it sound like an insult. Welcome to Caloris. I trust your journey was comfortable. Comfortable enough, Darren replied, his tone even but guarded. Though I didn't expect such a grand welcoming committee. You are an honored guest of the crown, Xanthor said, his voice dripping with disdain for the very idea and a potential witness in a matter critical to the Empire. Naturally, you are received with due ceremony. The formalities dragged on as they moved from the platform into the citadel of eternal radiance, its towering presence looming over the Kairani capital. Darren was introduced to a parade of officials, their names and titles blending into a haze of alien syllables. Each regarded him with a mix of curiosity, suspicion, or outright hostility, their blue-skinned faces unreadable, yet piercing. Outwardly, Darren maintained a calm demeanor, offering curt but polite responses. Inwardly, his mind churned, cataloging every face, noting subtle alliances and flagging potential threats. His long-dormant military instincts flared to life in this alien stronghold, sharpening his senses as he navigated the opulent corridors. They were led through a labyrinth of increasingly lavish passageways until they reached a grand reception hall. Here the delegation dispersed, leaving only Arethea, Darren General Arveth, Lord Xanthor, and a handful of key advisors. The High Council will convene tomorrow morning. Xanthor announced, his voice carrying the weight of authority. Until then, Mr. Holt will be housed in the Eastern Wing, as befits a guest of the crown. That won't be necessary, Arethea countered smoothly, her tone unyielding. Mr. Holt will stay in the royal quarters under my personal protection. Xanthor's surprise was palpable, his lighter blue skin seeming to pale further. Your Majesty, that is highly irregular. The Eastern Wing was prepared specifically for him. I'm aware of the preparations, she said, cutting him off. Nevertheless, Mr. Holt remains under my direct oversight until the council session. My decision is final. Their gazes locked, a silent clash of wills crackling in the air. Finally, Xanthor bowed his head in apparent acquiescence, though his eyes betrayed calculation. As you wish, Your Majesty. If there's nothing further, I'll inform the council of these arrangements. He departed with most of the advisors, leaving General Arveth to approach Arethea. Your Majesty? He said, his voice low, a word in private. She nodded, then turned to Darren. Wait here. I'll be brief. They moved to a corner of the hall, assuming they were out of earshot, but fragments of their exchange reached Darren's ears. Unnecessary provocation, Arveth murmured. Xanthor will use this to claim the human can't be trusted in the royal quarters. That's exactly my intent, Arethea replied coolly. Let him think that. My decision stands, General, not yours to question. They returned moments later, Arveth's face rigid with disapproval, Arethea's composure unshaken. Come, Darren, she said. I'll show you to your quarters myself. As they walked through the palace's gleaming halls, Darren voiced the question gnawing at him since their arrival. Why insist on keeping me in the royal quarters? It's clearly stirring trouble. Trouble, I anticipated, Arethea said without breaking stride. In the Eastern Wing, Xanthor would have you watched, possibly drugged or interrogated before the council session. I couldn't risk that. In the royal quarters, my personal guards answered to me, not the council or the traditionalists. She glanced at him, her silver eyes softening slightly. You'll be safe there. Darren wasn't entirely convinced. You're taking a political risk for me. I'm securing my witness, she corrected, though her tone hinted at more. Darren couldn't help but wonder about the woman beside him, a queen forged in survival, a politician shaped by the child he'd pulled from the flames. How much of her concern was strategy, and how much was personal? The royal quarters were a palace within a palace, a series of interconnected chambers radiating alien opulence, yet strangely familiar luxury. Artwork shimmered on the walls, shifting with each angle of view. Materials Darren couldn't identify gleamed softly, and furniture molded itself to his body, offering unparalleled comfort. These are your rooms, Arethea said, gesturing to a suite off the main reception area. My chambers are nearby, and General Arveth's security team guards this wing. Generous for a mere witness, Darren observed a wry edge to his voice. Perhaps she acknowledged, a faint smile tugging at her lips. But nothing about this is simple, as you've surely realized. Before he could reply, a soft chime sounded, and a servant appeared at the entrance. Your Majesty, the servant said, bowing deeply. Lord Xanthor requests an immediate audience regarding tomorrow's council session. Arethea's expression hardened. Inform Lord Xanthor I'll meet him in 1 hour in the Silver Chamber. Not before. The servant bowed and withdrew, Arathea turned back to Darren. Rest now, she advised, her voice firm, yet tinged with concern. Tomorrow will test us both in ways we can't fully predict. As she moved to leave, Darren called after her. What happens if this fails, if they don't believe me, or if something goes wrong with the right? She paused at the doorway, her silhouette framed against the corridor's soft glow. Then I lose my throne, she said simply, and our peoples will likely return to war within a year. With that stark truth, she left him alone in the alien splendor of his temporary quarters, the weight of two civilizations' futures pressing heavily on his shoulders. Sleep eluded Darren that night despite the lavish comfort of his rooms. Rest came in fleeting moments fractured by restless anxiety. The looming truth-telling rite and its consequences haunted his thoughts, not just the act itself, but the ripple effects it could unleash. When morning arrived, heralded by the room's ambient lights slowly brightening, he was already awake, standing at a window overlooking the Kaorani capital. The city stirred below aircraft, weaving orderly patterns between towering structures, citizens beginning their daily lives. How many knew what transpired in the palace today? How many grasped that their future might hinge on a human mechanic's words? A soft chime announced a servant's arrival bearing formal attire on a hovering tray. The garments, clearly designed for a human, echoed Earth's formal wear, but were crafted from Korani fabrics, their colors deep charcoal with silver accents complementing the royal palette without mimicking it. Her Majesty requests you wear these for the council session, the servant said, setting the tray down and bowing. She'll meet you in the antechamber in 1 hour. Alone, Darren examined the clothes. The long coat, trousers, and shirt were exquisitely made with subtle patterns that shimmered and shifted as he moved them. The fit was flawless, too flawless, suggesting Arathea had his measurements taken without his knowledge, a quiet reminder of her meticulous planning. The message was clear: he was to stand as a dignified envoy of humanity, neither too bold to offend nor too plain to be dismissed. She was orchestrating every detail with surgical precision. When dressed, Darren admitted the effect was striking, the attire lending him an air of gravitas he hadn't felt in years. An hour later, he was escorted to the antechamber, where Arathea awaited, resplendent in full royal regalia. Her violet gown seemed to drink in and refract light, adorned with glowing symbols of office. Her silver hair, woven with strands of liquid metal that moved faintly, framed her as the embodiment of sovereignty, regal, untouchable. Yet when her eyes met his, a fleeting softness broke through her majesty. "You look appropriate," she said, a high compliment in the context. "Thank you," Darren replied, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "Though I'll stand out in a room full of Korani regardless." "That's the point," she said, her voice steady. "Your difference is your strength today. You're not of our world, not bound by our politics. That makes your testimony invaluable." General Arveth entered, his expression as stern as ever. "Your Majesty, the council is assembled. Lord Xanthor requests the human be scanned for weapons and communication devices before entering the chamber." "A reasonable precaution," Arathea acknowledged. "Proceed, but with respect." "General." The scan was thorough yet professional, Arveth's team using devices that swept over Darren without contact. When finished, Arveth gave a curt nod. "He is clean," he reported, adding, "though I maintain my reservations about this entire affair." "Noted," General Arathea replied coolly. "Now let us proceed. The council awaits." The High Council chamber, nestled at the heart of the citadel, was a marvel of imposing grandeur. Tiered seating encircled a central floor accommodating 100 Kaorani nobles, the Empire's advisory elite. Above, a crystal dome revealed a purple-tinted morning sky. As they entered, a hush fell over the assembly, all eyes fixed on the striking procession. Arathea in her regal splendor, flanked by General Arveth and his security detail with Darren just behind. Lord Xanthor sat prominently, his elevated seat marking him as first counselor, his gaze coldly analytical as it tracked their approach. Arathea ascended a raised dais to a throne carved from luminescent stone, a masterpiece of Kaorani craftsmanship. Darren remained on the main floor, acutely aware of the hundreds of alien eyes weighing him. Esteemed members of the High Council, Arathea began, her voice clear and commanding, resonating through the chamber. "I have called this special session to address questions of succession and legitimacy raised in recent months. As is my right as sovereign, I present a witness whose testimony bears directly on these matters." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Xanthor leaned forward, his voice deep and effortless. "Your Majesty," he said, "while we respect your prerogative, many council members question the nature and timing of this individual's appearance. What concerns specifically Lord Xanthor? Arathea asked, though Darren sensed she anticipated his response. To be direct, Xanthor continued, you've brought a human, a former enemy combatant, into the sacred heart of our empire, claiming he holds knowledge vital to state matters. Many find this hard to accept. I understand these concerns, Arathea replied evenly, which is why Mr. Holt has agreed to testify under the right of truth-telling, his words bound by the Verithar serum, subject to the same constraints as any Kairani witness. The announcement sparked a louder stir among the nobles. The right of truth-telling, rarely invoked, had never been used for a non-Kairani. The sacred right was not designed for alien physiology, Xanthor objected. We have no assurance it will function on a human. Our medical advisors confirm its compatibility, Arathea countered. The serum's psychic principles transcend species. Xanthor's expression betrayed his skepticism, but he pivoted. Even if the serum works, we must question the relevance of this testimony. What could a human soldier know of Kairani succession rights? Arathea rose from her throne, the movement commanding absolute attention. 10 years ago, during the war's final days, a royal transport was shot down over the Kairani highlands. That ship carried the last surviving heir to the throne, me. Official records state I was rescued by a Kairani team and returned to the capital. She paused, her silver eyes sweeping the chamber. Those records are incomplete. Before the recovery team arrived, I was pulled from the burning wreckage by a Terra Command soldier who defied orders to eliminate survivors. That soldier stands before you today. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Xanthor's face darkened, a mix of anger and calculation flickering across his features. This is preposterous, he declared as the uproar subsided. You expect us to believe an enemy soldier in a war of extinction chose to save a Kairani royal? Why would he do such a thing? Lord Caer Xanthor's voice cut through the charged silence of the High Council chamber, his tone thick with disbelief. Queen Arathea turned to Darren, her silver eyes steady yet expectant. Perhaps we should let him answer that himself. Darren Holt, are you willing to undergo the rite of truth-telling, to share your memories of that night with the council? Every gaze in the chamber locked onto Darren, the weight of their scrutiny almost tangible. The moment of truth had arrived, stripping away the layers of preparation and political maneuvering. It came down to a single choice: to speak or to stay silent. I am willing, he declared, his voice ringing clear across the hushed chamber, resolute as the stars beyond. The ritual preparations began at once, a team of robed figures, priests or scientists Darren couldn't discern entering with intricate equipment. A circular platform rose from the chamber's floor, encircled by 7 smaller pedestals, arranged in a precise geometric pattern, their surfaces glinting under the crystal dome's purple light. The council will select 7 witnesses to form the truth circle, one of the robed figures announced, their voice solemn. They will share in the memories revealed by the serum and attest to their authenticity. A flurry of nominations and votes followed, resulting in the selection of 7 council members, including, predictably, Lord Xanthor. Arathea, as sovereign, would also join her right unquestioned. The human will stand on the central platform, the ritual master instructed. The witnesses will take their places at the outer pedestals. Darren stepped onto the platform, feeling a subtle vibration beneath his boots, the material subtly molding to his stance as if alive. Around him, Arathea and the 7 council members took their positions, each on a pedestal, their blue skin and silver eyes a stark contrast to his human frame. The Verithar serum will now be administered, the ritual master declared. Once activated, it will forge a psychic link between the primary witness and the truth circle, allowing all shared memories to be experienced directly. A secondary platform arose beside Darren, bearing a crystalline vessel filled with luminescent blue liquid that pulsed faintly as if imbued with life. Extend your hand, human, the ritual master commanded. Darren complied, offering his right hand palm up. With a delicate instrument, the master placed 3 drops of the serum onto his skin. The liquid shimmered briefly before seeping into his flesh, sending a rush of warmth up his arm and into his chest. A disorienting clarity followed, sharpening his senses. Colors flared vividly. Sounds grew crisp, and he felt the presence of the 8 Kairani in the truth circle, their consciousnesses brushing against his own, like whispers in a storm. The link is established, the ritual master confirmed. Darren Holt, you are bound by the truth. Any attempt to lie will bring great pain and alert the circle to deception. Speak now of the night you claim to have met our sovereign. The chamber fell deathly silent, every eye fixed on Darren. He drew a deep breath, the serum amplifying his memories, pulling that distant night into razor-sharp focus. It was the final offensive of the war. He began, his voice steady. My unit was tasked with clearing a sector near the royal compound. We'd been scattered in heavy fighting. I was alone when I saw the royal ship crash. As he spoke, his memories surged through the psychic link, vivid and unfiltered. The council members in the truth circle gasped, immersed in the heat of the fires, the weight of his combat gear, the inner turmoil, as his AI ordered him to eliminate the survivor. The ship crashed less than a kilometer away. Darren continued, my orders were clear, no survivors. But when I reached the wreckage, I saw her. The memories sharpened, centering on a small blue-skinned figure stumbling from the burning debris. Through the link, the council saw her as Darren had a child wounded and afraid, her silver eyes wide with terror as they met his. My AI marked her as royalty and ordered immediate elimination, he said, the cold mechanical voice echoing through their shared minds. I refused. I approached her instead. Lord Xanthor's voice sliced through the narrative. Why? Why disobey your orders to save an enemy? The question pulsed through the psychic link, demanding truth. The serum compelled Darren's honesty, raw and unyielding. Because she was a child, he said simply, not a soldier, not a threat, just a scared girl who needed help. I couldn't pull the trigger. No order could justify that. The raw conviction in his words flowed through the link, his certainty in that moment, his readiness to face consequences rather than commit murder. Several council members shifted uneasily, confronted by the humanity of an enemy they'd been taught to vilify. Continue. Arethea urged, her voice steady despite the emotions Darren sensed pulsing from her through the link. I approached her, set my weapon aside, he went on. She didn't run. She watched me waiting, and then she spoke a single word. The link carried the child's voice, clear, haunting, sullen. Murmurs erupted among the council members outside the truth circle, while those linked remained silent, their recognition of the word's weight palpable. I picked her up and carried her toward the neutral zone, Darren continued. Her arm was badly burned. I tore a piece of my uniform to bind her wound. The memory unfolded in vivid detail, the careful way he treated her injury, the gentle touch despite their differences, the knife he used to cut the fabric. Before we reached safety, a Karani rescue vessel arrived. I set her down at the edge of a clearing. Her people took her aboard, Anisha. That was the last I saw of her until 2 days ago on a Shar verge. The psychic link thrummed with the truth of his words, untainted by deception, a raw recounting of that night's events. Xanthor leaned forward, his face taut with focus. The child you rescued, are you certain she's the one who now sits on the throne? Yes, Darren replied without hesitation. Her eyes silver, unlike any I've seen before or since. Many Kairani have silver eyes, Xanthor countered. Not like hers, Darren insisted, his certainty flooding the link, rooted in the moment he'd recognized Arethea on a Shar verge. Another council member spoke. How can we be sure these memories weren't altered or implanted? Humans are susceptible to suggestion. The Varathar serum prevents such deception, the ritual master explained. It reveals memories as they exist in the witness's mind. Any tampering would be evident. Ask him about the knife, Arethea interjected suddenly. Xanthor's eyes narrowed. What knife? The one he used to cut his uniform, she said. Ask him to describe it. Describe this knife, human, Xanthor demanded. Darren focused, the memory clear. Standard Terra command issue. Carbon composite blade polymer handle. My name was etched on the blade, standard for personal gear. And what became of it? Xanthor pressed. I left it with her, Darren answered. In the chaos, when the rescue ship arrived, I set her down, still holding it. Arethea rose from her pedestal, breaking protocol, her voice resolute. I still have that knife, she declared. I've carried it every day since that night. She drew the small blade from a hidden pocket in her regal garments, holding it aloft. The etched name Darren Holt caught the light, undeniable. The chamber erupted in exclamations and hurried whispers. The physical evidence, paired with the serum-verified memories, was a powerful blow even the most skeptical couldn't dismiss. Xanthor, however, remained unmoved. A knife proves nothing, he argued. It could have been acquired any time by any means. We need irrefutable proof that the one on the throne is the true heir of the Kairani bloodline. Arethea returned to her pedestal, her gaze unwavering. Then perhaps one final memory will satisfy you, Lord Xanthor. Darren, do you recall the word I spoke when you found me? Yes, he replied. You said Solon, and do you know its meaning, she asked. You told me it means hope that hurts in ancient Qurani. Arithia turned to the council, her voice commanding the chamber. Solon is not just a word from our ancient tongue. It was the private name my father gave me, known only to the royal family and our closest advisors, unrecorded in any public document. She fixed her gaze on Xanthor. You were my father's advisor, Lord Xanthor. You know this to be true. If this human knows that name, it could only be because he heard it from my lips, because I am indeed who I claim to be, and he is the one who saved me. Xanthor's composure cracked, a rare flicker of doubt crossing his face. Through the psychic link, Darren felt the man's inner turmoil, his ambitions clashing with the undeniable truth. The rite has confirmed the human's memories, the ritual master announced formally. Does any member of the Truth Circle contest their authenticity? One by one, the council members affirmed the memory's truth. Only Xanthor hesitated, his face a mask of calculation. Lord Xanthor, Arithia said quietly, the truth stands before you, verified by our sacred rite. Will you accept it or place your ambition above the traditions you claim to uphold? The chamber held its breath, hundreds of Kairani awaiting his response. Finally, with visible reluctance, Xanthor gave a stiff nod. I do not contest the memories, he said tightly. The human speaks truth as he knows it. Relief pulsed through the psychic link from Arithia, though her regal exterior remained unshaken. Then let it be recorded in the archives, she declared. I, Arithia, am confirmed as the true heir to the throne of Caloris, my identity verified by the sacred rite of truth-telling. The ritual master moved to deactivate the serum, but Arithia raised a hand. One moment, she said, before we conclude, I wish to make a declaration still bound by the truth. She stepped forward on her pedestal, addressing the council with unwavering resolve. For too long, our empire has been torn between those who seek peace and those who cling to past hatreds. Today, you've witnessed a truth long hidden, that a human soldier chose mercy over violence, compassion over hatred. Her gaze swept the chamber, fierce and unyielding. I stand before you not just as your queen, but as proof that our old enemies can show. Humanity can see beyond species and politics to value a single life. I exist because of this truth. I would not be here without this man. She turned to Darren, and through the link, he felt a surge of emotion, gratitude, yes, but something deeper, a shared destiny transcending their worlds. Darren Holt, she said formally, you've traveled far and risked much to speak truth before this council. How may the throne of Caloris repay its debt to you? The ritual question carried political weight. Darren couldn't fully grasp, but the serum still coursed through him, demanding honesty over tact. I want nothing from the throne, he said simply. I didn't save you for reward then, and I don't expect one now. Nevertheless, Arithia persisted. Tradition demands truth speakers be honored. I ask again, what would you have of me? Darren weighed his words, aware they'd echo in Qurani history. If I must ask then, only this, remember that day. Let it guide your choices about my people, about all who differ from yours. That's reward enough. Arithia considered his response, then to the shock of the assembly stepped down from her pedestal and approached him on the central platform. Kneel, she said, her voice resonating through the chamber, a command heavy with meaning. The word kneel hung between them, an echo of their charged encounter on Ashar Verge, reverberating with unspoken weight. The council chamber held its breath. Nobles froze in intense silence, uncertain of the drama unfolding before them. Kneel, Arithia repeated, her voice resonant yet soft, not as a subject, but as a symbol of alliance. Darren met her silver eyes, searching for her intent. Through the fading psychic link, he sensed no malice, no attempt at humiliation, only a fierce desire to forge a moment that would echo through history. Yet something within him resisted. The soldier who had defied orders to save a child was still the man standing here unbowed. If the truth demands I bow my head, he said, his voice clear and unwavering, then it's not a truth worth preserving. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Even Lord Xanthor's composed facade cracked with shock at this defiance. The queen's guards tensed hands, inching toward their weapons. For a heartbeat, Arithia stood motionless, her expression unreadable. Then, to the astonishment of every Qurani present, she slowly, deliberately knelt before Darren, before him, before the entire High Council, the sovereign of the seven systems, humbling herself before a human. Then I will bow instead, she declared, her voice steady, resonant with conviction. To honor the truth that saved me, to affirm that true strength lies not in demanding submission, but in offering compassion when none is required. The chamber erupted in chaos. Lords and ladies leapt from their seats, some shouting in outrage, others staring in stunned silence. Xanthor's face twisted, a mix of shock and cunning calculation, as he weighed how to wield this unprecedented act to his advantage. But Arathea remained kneeling, her silver eyes locked with Darren's, the faint psychic link pulsing with a truth beyond words, not mere political theater, but a profound acknowledgement of the debt she owed and the future she envisioned. After what felt like an eternity, but was mere seconds, she rose with graceful dignity, turning to face the tumultuous council. Raising a hand, she commanded silence. What you've witnessed today, she proclaimed as the chamber quieted, is not weakness, but the courage to embrace truth over tradition. This human saved my life when duty demanded otherwise. I honor that choice not despite my crown, but because of it. She returned to her throne, her bearing regal once more. This council session is concluded. The right of truth-telling has confirmed my identity beyond question. Let any who still doubt step forward now or hold their peace forever. No one spoke, not even Xanthor, though his expression promised this battle was far from over. As the ritual master deactivated the Varathor serum, Darren felt the psychic link dissolve, leaving him alone on the central platform, acutely aware of the myriad Khairani eyes upon him, some filled with awe, others with hatred. Arathea had won this round, her throne secured for now. But by kneeling before a human, she had opened a new vulnerability, a political fault line her enemies would surely exploit. Darren, who had come to Caloris only to speak truth, now stood at the heart of a transformation poised to reshape two civilizations. The mechanic from Ashar Verge had become a symbol of mercy, of alliance, of a future unwritten. As the council members filed out, many casting lingering glances at the human who had upended their world, Darren met Arathea's gaze across the emptying chamber. In her silver eyes, he saw triumph laced with uncertainty, the weight of her actions, and the challenges ahead. Whatever came next, nothing would ever be the same. In the days that followed, Caloris burned with controversy. News of the council session spread like wildfire, polarizing the empire in ways unseen since the war. From the safety of the royal quarters, where Arathea insisted Darren remain for his protection, he followed the upheaval through translated media reports. Some Khairani hailed Arathea as a visionary, her courage in acknowledging her human savior, heralding a new era of cooperation and mutual respect. Others, particularly the conservative factions, decried her kneeling as a betrayal of Khairani pride, a humiliating surrender of tradition. They painted Darren as a cunning manipulator who had somehow coerced their queen into a disgraceful act. Lord Xanthor predictably emerged as the voice of this dissent. Unable to challenge Arathea's legitimacy, he pivoted to attacking her judgment, insinuating that her emotional tie to her rescuer clouded her ability to rule. Your political situation's gotten messier, Darren observed, as he and Arathea reviewed the latest reports in her private study, the holographic display casting a soft glow across her thoughtful silver eyes. Was kneeling part of your plan all along? She looked up, her gaze candid. No, she admitted. It was a spontaneous response to your refusal, a moment of truth I hadn't anticipated. You should have seen it coming, he said, a wry edge to his voice. I didn't kneel on Ashar Verge. Why would I in your council chamber? A faint smile curved her lips. Perhaps I hoped the weight of the moment would sway you. Or perhaps I wanted to test if you were still the man who defied orders to save a child. You exceeded my expectations, Darren, as you did 10 years ago. Before he could reply, General Arveth entered, his expression graver than usual. Your Majesty, he said with a formal bow, the situation in the southern provinces has escalated. Lord Xanthor has called for public demonstrations against the human influence in the royal court. Arathea's face hardened. Predictable but troubling. Any violent incidents? Not yet, Arveth replied, his tone clipped. But security reports warn it could turn quickly. Xanthor's rhetoric grows more inflammatory by the hour. Increase the palace guard, she ordered, and prepare a public address. I want to speak directly to our people, unfiltered by Xanthor's propaganda. Arveth nodded, then hesitated. There's another matter, Your Majesty, regarding the human. Darren Holt has a name, General Arathea said coolly. Use it. Arveth's jaw tightened, but he complied. Regarding Mr. Holt, intelligence suggests certain factions may be planning direct action against him as a symbol of your controversial policies. Assassination, you mean? Darren said bluntly. That is one possibility, Arveth acknowledged, addressing Arathea rather than Darren. I recommend immediate evacuation. Return him to Ashar Verge with a security detail. Arathea shook her head. That would be seen as retreat, validating Xanthor's claims that I erred. No Darren stays here under our protection. With respect, Your Majesty, Arveth pressed his presence only fuels the unrest. The longer he remains, the more ammunition you give your enemies. He's got a point, Darren interjected. I've done what you asked. There's no need for me to stay and complicate things further. Arathea rose, pacing to the window overlooking the capital's shimmering skyline. You both speak as if this is merely politics. It's not. She turned her silver eyes fierce. Darren Holt's presence here is a living testament to the truth that cooperation between our peoples is not just possible but essential. A symbol that could cost you your throne, Arveth warned. Or secure it for generations, she countered. It depends on your perspective, General. Arveth's expression screamed disagreement, but he knew better than to argue. As you wish, Your Majesty. I'll bolster security and prepare for your address. He departed, leaving a heavy silence. Darren joined Arathea at the window. He's right, you know. I'm becoming a liability. You are becoming a catalyst, she corrected, her voice firm. Change is never easy, Darren, especially when it challenges centuries of prejudice and fear. Change shouldn't cost stability, he argued. Your people need a strong leader, not a revolutionary who might fall before her reforms take root. Her silver eyes studied him, piercing and thoughtful. You sound like a politician now, not a soldier. Quite an evolution. 10 years gives you time to think, he said with a shrug. I've seen enough revolutions fail to cheer blindly for them. This isn't a revolution, she said firmly. It's a correction, a return to principles that should have always guided us. My ancestors chose fear and hatred. I choose otherwise. Before Darren could respond, a chime signaled an incoming communication. Arathea activated the holographic display, revealing an unfamiliar Kairani official. Your Majesty, the official began, we've received a message from Ashar Verge. A Vexillari named Tovara demands information about Darren Holt. She claims to have recovered war-era data logs relevant to recent events. Darren straightened, surprised. Tovara. What data logs? Arathea gestured for him to join her at the display. Put the Vexillari through, she instructed. The image shifted, and Tovara's familiar face appeared. Her skin cycling through nervous hues of yellow and amber. Darren, she exclaimed. Thank the cosmic forces you're alive. Are you okay? Blink twice if they're coercing you. Despite the tension, Darren grinned. I'm fine, Tovara. No blinking needed. What's this about data logs? Her skin settled into a focused blue. After you left with the Queen, I got worried. Started digging into old war records about you and Caloris. Most were classified, but I've got connections. Her tentacles flicked dismissively. I've found something: big helmet cam footage from a Terra Command soldier in the Kairani Highlands during the final offensive. The timestamp matches the night you've been talking about. My helmet cam? Darren asked, incredulous. That's impossible. My footage was wiped when I was discharged. Not yours, Tovara clarified. Another soldier's one searching for you after your unit got separated. He recorded the royal ship crashing and... She hesitated. You need to see it. Arathea leaned forward. Can you transmit the footage, securely already packaged? Tovara replied. Sending now. The display flickered as the data arrived. Arathea glanced at Darren, silently seeking permission. He nodded, curiosity outweighing his apprehension. The footage played grainy with the green tint of Terra Command night vision. It showed a soldier moving through burning underbrush following a tracking signal. Holt, respond. What's your position? A voice crackled through the comms, unanswered. The soldier reached a vantage point over a clearing, the camera zooming in to reveal Darren kneeling beside a small Kairani figure. The footage captured him, tearing a strip from his uniform, using his knife to bind the child's burned arm, then gently lifting her to carry her toward the neutral zone. A Kairani ship descended swiftly, and the recording soldier ducked into cover, but the camera kept rolling as Darren set the child down and stepped back. Kairani guards emerged, surrounding the girl, some aiming weapons at Darren but holding fire. An officer, distinguished by his armor, exchanged brief words with Darren before taking the child aboard. The Kairani withdrew and the footage ended. The footage cut off abruptly as the recording soldier slipped back into the shadows of the Kaurani Highlands. A heavy silence settled over the private study, the blank holographic display mirroring the weight of the moment. Darren stared at the empty screen, memories surging back with crystalline clarity. That officer, he'd forgotten the brief exchange, the fleeting moment of mutual understanding amidst the chaos. This changes everything, Arathea said softly, her voice laced with quiet awe. Independent verification from Terra Command's own records. Tava'ara's face reappeared on the display, her skin shifting through hues of urgency. There's more, she said. I traced the officer in the footage, the one who spoke to Darren. His name was Arveth, General Arveth. Ring any bells? Darren turned to Arathea, shock rippling through him. Your head of security. He was there that night. Her silver eyes widened, betraying her own disbelief. He never said a word, never hinted he knew you or witnessed what happened. Probably because he's been planning to assassinate Darren since day one, Tavara interjected bluntly, her tentacles twitching with agitation. My sources say he's been meeting secretly with Xanthor, scheming to eliminate the human problem without implicating the traditionalists. That's a grave accusation, Arathea said, her voice tight, a storm of controlled anger brewing beneath her regal calm. Do you have proof? Sending it now, Tavara confirmed, a recorded conversation from 2 days ago. Arveth suggested staging it as a lone radical's act. Xanthor approved but demanded deniability. The second recording played audio only, but voice analysis confirmed the speakers' identities. Darren watched Arathea's expression harden into something cold and lethal, her blue skin glowing faintly with the intensity of her fury. When the recording ended, she stood perfectly still, the only sign of her rage, the subtle luminescence pulsing beneath her surface. Thank you, Tavara, she said finally, her voice steady but edged with steel. This may have saved not only Darren's life, but possibly mine as well. I am in your debt. Tavara's skin flushed a pleased purple. Just bring him back safe, Your Majesty. Ashar Verge needs its best mechanic. As the communication ended, Arathea turned to Darren, her silver eyes heavy with betrayal. It seems we've both been deceived by those we trusted. Arveth was one of my father's most loyal officers. I never questioned his allegiance. People change, Darren said, his voice low. Or maybe they just reveal their true colors when the stakes demand it. Indeed, she replied, moving to a console and entering commands with swift precision. I'm enacting security protocols. Arveth's access to palace systems is revoked. My loyal guards will secure this wing shortly. What's next? Darren asked. You've got evidence of a plot against us both. That's treason, I assume. The highest form, she confirmed, her tone grim. But a public trial would deepen divisions. Xanthor would claim the evidence is fabricated, turning it into another spectacle. So what's the alternative? A resolute expression settled over her features. We turn their plan against them. Let them believe they're succeeding, then strike at the moment of greatest advantage. You want to set a trap, Darren realized, the pieces falling into place. Precisely. She activated another console, summoning a holographic map of the Citadel of Eternal Radiance. My public address is set for tomorrow at midday. All of Caloris will be watching. If Arveth and Xanthor plan to move against us, that's their moment, a public assassination framed as the work of extremists, not the traditionalist leadership. Using me as bait, Darren noted, his voice steady. Using us both, she corrected, her silver eyes meeting his. They want to erase you as a symbol, and me as a ruler, one clean strike to restore their vision of Korani supremacy. Despite the gravity of the situation, a familiar calm washed over Darren, the clarity of impending danger, a sensation dormant since his military days. I assume you have a counter-strategy, he said. Arathea's eyes gleamed with fierce determination. I do, but it demands trust, absolute trust between us. After all that's happened, I don't question your intentions, but your willingness to risk grave danger for a people not your own. Darren considered her words. 10 years ago, I risked my career, my life to save one Korani child. Why would I hesitate now when billions of lives, human and Korani, hang in the balance? A softness touched her expression, a glimpse of the vulnerable girl beneath the queen. Because that was instinct, a choice made in the heat of the moment. This is deliberate, with full knowledge of the consequences. What exactly are you proposing? She outlined her plan, bold, perilous, but potentially decisive if executed flawlessly. As Darren listened, he realized she was right. This was no impulsive act like a decade ago. This was a calculated leap, placing him at the heart of Korani politics, not just as a witness, but as an active force in reshaping the bond between their peoples. When she finished, he sat in silence, weighing the stakes. Well, she prompted, her voice gentle but urgent. Will you stand with me, Darren Holt? Not as a subject or a symbol, but as an ally. He met her gaze unflinching. I will, on one condition. If we survive this, no more manipulations, no more political games, just truth between us, whatever it costs. She held his stare, and for a moment he glimpsed the child he'd saved, vulnerable, genuine, untouched by the weight of empire. Truth, she agreed softly, no matter the cost. The next day dawned bright over the Kairani capital, the twin suns casting a radiant glow. From the royal balcony where Arithia would deliver her address, Darren saw thousands gathered in the great plaza below, their mood tense electric with anticipation. News of the council session had sparked unprecedented interest in their young queen's next move. Behind the scenes, preparations of a darker kind were in motion. Loyal guards handpicked by Arithia had replaced the regular security detail. Evidence against Arveth and Xanthor was secured, copies entrusted to loyal officials ready to act if the worst came to pass. Darren, clad once more in formal attire, rehearsed his role in the dangerous performance ahead. Are you certain about this? Arithia asked in a chamber adjacent to the balcony, her regal garb catching the light. There's still time to change the plan. I'm certain, Darren replied, his voice steady. Are you? Your throne, your life, you're risking everything. Some things are worth the risk, she said, simply, her silver eyes resolute. A chime signaled the moment had arrived. Arithia straightened, her regalia shimmering as she moved toward the balcony entrance. Darren took his place just behind her as planned. As they stepped out, a hush fell over the vast crowd. Darren scanned the plaza, noting guard positions, strategic vantage points. His military instincts fully awakened in the face of imminent danger. Arithia began her address, her voice clear and commanding, carrying across the plaza. People of Caloris, she declared, I stand before you at a moment of profound change for our empire. For generations, we've defined ourselves by strength, tradition, and separation from other species. These served us in conflict, but they cannot guide us into the future we face. She paused, letting her words sink in. The crowd showed a mix of agreement, skepticism, and hostility, the divisions of Kairani society starkly visible. 10 years ago, she continued, in the darkest hour of our war with Earth, an enemy soldier made a choice that defied everything our peoples believed. He chose mercy over hatred, compassion over duty. That choice saved my life and set our empire on a new path, though we've been slow to embrace it. Darren remained vigilant, scanning the crowd, the nearby buildings, the palace guards. Where would Arveth strike? How that soldier stands beside me today, Arithia declared, gesturing to Darren, not as a prisoner or curiosity, but as a living reminder that the barriers we build between ourselves and others are our own creation and can be undone by acts of courage and conscience. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Darren spotted Xanthor among the dignitaries, his expression carefully neutral, despite Arithia's provocative words. Arveth was nowhere in sight, a troubling absence. Some have questioned my judgment, Arithia acknowledged. They claim honoring this human diminishes our Kairani heritage. To them I say what defines us is not isolation, but growth, not destruction, but the will to preserve. As she spoke, Darren noticed a subtle shift among the palace guards. 3 repositioned, aligning for a clear line of sight to the balcony. His instincts screamed danger, a tactical setup for an attack. The future I envision, Arithia continued, seemingly oblivious to the threat, is one where Caloris leads not through domination, but through wisdom, extending friendship not from weakness, but from the strength of shared humanity. The movement was lightning fast. A guard raised what seemed a ceremonial staff, transforming into a sleek weapon aimed at Arithia. Down, Darren shouted, lunging forward as the weapon fired. Time slowed. Arithia turned, her silver eyes widening. The crackling energy bolt tore through the air. Darren threw himself into its path, taking the full impact meant for her. Pain seared through his chest, a white-hot explosion of agony. Screams erupted from the crowd, loyal guards shouting as they moved to neutralize the threat. Above it all, Arithia's voice rang out, calling his name, no longer regal, but raw with desperation. As he collapsed to the balcony floor, darkness crept into his vision. He felt her kneel beside him, her hands pressing against his wound, her voice pleading, human in its fear. Stay with me, Darren, she said. Please, not again. I can't lose you again. He tried to speak to tell her the plan had worked, that Arveth had revealed himself, that she now had the proof she needed. But words failed as consciousness slipped away. His final thought was of the small blue girl he'd carried from the flames a decade ago. How strange that their paths had intertwined again. How strange that he might die protecting her, just as he had once lived by saving her. Some circles, it seemed, were destined to close. Darren hadn't expected to wake. The weapon, calibrated for Kaorani physiology, was meant to incapacitate at best, kill at full power, and the pain suggested Arveth hadn't held back. Yet consciousness returned, bringing the sterile scent of a medical facility and the soft hum of advanced technology. Confusion gripped him first. "He's awake," an unfamiliar voice said, clinical and Korani. Darren opened his eyes slowly, squinting against the harsh light. He lay in a high-tech medical chamber surrounded by unfamiliar devices, tubes, and sensors monitoring his injuries. Darren Arethea's voice came from his left, soft with relief. Darren turned his head with effort, pain flaring as he met Arethea's gaze. She sat beside his medical bed, her regal attire replaced by simpler robes, her silver hair unbound, cascading freely over her shoulders like a shimmering veil. "I'm alive," he rasped, his voice rough from disuse. "Yes," she said, leaning closer, relief softening her silver eyes. Though it was uncertain for a time. "Arveth," he asked. "Captured along with his co-conspirators," she confirmed. "The evidence from your friend Tavara, paired with the public assassination attempt, left no room for doubt. Even Xanther couldn't twist it to his advantage." Darren tried to sit up, but a sharp pain in his chest forced him back. "How bad is it?" "The weapon was calibrated for Korani physiology," she explained. "It reacted unpredictably with your human biology. The damage was severe but treatable. You've been unconscious for 3 days while our medical team adapted their methods to heal you." 3 days. The political tides of Caloris could have shifted entirely in that time. "And your position?" he asked. A faint smile touched her lips. "Secure for now." Seeing their queen nearly assassinated, then watching a human take a bolt meant for her, stirred something profound in our people. Even the traditionalists have had to temper their rhetoric. "So our plan worked," Darren concluded, a weak smile breaking through. "Better than we hoped," Arethea agreed. "Though I'd have preferred a version where you didn't nearly die." "That makes 2 of us," he said, managing a faint grin. "What happens now?" Her silver eyes studied him thoughtfully. "Now you recover. And when you're strong enough, you face a choice." "What choice? Whether to return to Ashar Verge, to your old life," she said carefully, "or to consider an alternative." Darren searched her face, trying to decipher the weight behind her measured words. "What alternative?" She said simply. "Here on Caloris, not as a symbol or political pawn, but—" She hesitated, her voice softening. "As an advisor, someone who sees the world differently, who can help me build the bridge between our peoples I've envisioned." "An advisor," Darren repeated, noting the careful neutrality of the term. "Is that really what you're asking?" Their eyes met, and in that moment the barriers of species and station melted away, leaving only the bond forged in fire a decade ago, a connection that had defied all odds to endure. "What I'm asking," she said softly, "is for you to stay beside me, not as a consort or subordinate, not as a husband or a general, but as the one who reminds me who I am when the crown's weight threatens to make me forget." Her request was unlike anything Darren had anticipated, not a political role or romantic overture, but something deeper, a recognition of the unique tie binding them, born from a single act of compassion that had reshaped their lives. "That's a lot to ask," he said finally. "To leave everything I know to live among a people who until recently saw me as an enemy." "It is," she acknowledged, her voice gentle. "Perhaps too much. You've already given more than anyone could expect. If you choose to return to Ashar Verge, I'd understand completely." Darren closed his eyes, picturing the quiet life he'd built after the war. Was it truly what he wanted, or merely a refuge from a greater purpose he'd avoided naming? "Before I decide," he said, meeting her gaze again, "I need to know something. That word you spoke that night, sullen hope, that hurts. Why did you say it to me?" A shadow of old pain crossed her face. "It was the last thing my father said to me before we boarded that ship. Remember Solon even when all seems lost." It was his way of urging me to cling to hope no matter the odds. "When I saw you, an enemy soldier weapon trained on me, hope felt impossible, a distant, painful thing. Yet it was there hurting because it seemed so far away." Her voice softened. "Then you lowered your weapon and impossibility became reality." Darren absorbed the weight of her words, understanding at last the depth of that single word, how it had tethered them across years and stars. "I can't promise I'll stay forever," he said finally. "But I'll stay long enough to see if this new reality you're building is possible, long enough to help make it real if I can." Relief mingled with something deeper washed over her face. "That is all I can ask." In the days that followed, as Darren's strength returned, news flooded in from across the empire and beyond. The assassination attempt had sparked a seismic shift, forcing conversations about peace and cooperation, once deemed unthinkable. The footage of Darren's rescue of the young princess, now circulating through Kairani and human space, had prompted both species to question the old narratives of enmity. Though not directly tied to the plot, Lord Xanthor's influence waned, his traditionalist factions' extreme views sidelined by a public increasingly open to change. Arythea navigated this shifting landscape with newfound confidence, her legitimacy unquestioned, her vision gaining ground even among former skeptics. 3 weeks after the attempt, when Darren was strong enough to leave the medical chamber, Arythea led him to a private observatory atop the citadel of eternal radiance. Beneath a dome offering an unobstructed view of the stars, they stood side by side gazing at the vastness that had once divided their peoples. "Tova'ara sent another message," Darren said. "She's thinking of coming to Caloris. Says someone needs to keep an eye on me, make sure I don't spark an interstellar incident." Arythea smiled. She'd be welcome, the first Vexillari to visit the royal palace in over a century. Another boundary crossed. "You're collecting those," Darren noted. "Each one matters," she replied. "Each brings us closer to the future I believe is possible." They fell silent, comfortable in each other's presence, two souls bound by a single act of mercy and all that had followed. "10 years ago," Darren said at last, "when I carried you from that burning ship, I had no idea where it would lead. That one choice changed everything," she finished, her voice soft, "for both of us. For all of us, perhaps." He turned to her, seeing not the frightened child or distant queen, but Arythea, a woman of courage and vision, who had risked everything for the truth she held dear. "Solon," he said quietly. She reached out, her blue fingers intertwining with his human ones, a gesture once unthinkable, now familiar, neither romantic nor merely friendly, but something unique, forged in fire and sealed in truth. "Yes," she agreed. "Hope that hurts, but perhaps less when shared." Together, they stood neither bowing nor commanding as the stars spun above, and an uncertain but hopeful future stretched before them, waiting to be shaped. In the months that followed, Caloris transformed in ways unprecedented in its long history. With Darren at her side, Arythea launched reforms that opened the insular empire to galactic cooperation. Trade routes once barred to non-Korani flourished. Cultural exchanges bloomed where only military standoffs had stood. Not all embraced the change. Xanthor's traditionalists persisted, issuing sharp critiques and staging occasional protests. But their influence faded as the benefits of openness became clear to the Kairani public. Darren found himself in a role without precedent, neither diplomat nor consort, but something new: the Queen's Truth Speaker, a title honoring his historic testimony and his ongoing commitment to honesty between their peoples. Some days he joined Arythea at formal events, a living emblem of unity. Others he worked with military leaders from both civilizations, bridging their tactics and technologies to prevent future conflicts. Tova'ara arrived in Caloris, establishing the first Vexillari engineering consultancy in the capital. Her irreverent disregard for tradition initially shocked the court, but soon won her a following among younger nobles captivated by her off-world perspective. General Arveth, convicted of treason, was sentenced to lifelong exile rather than execution. A mercy that surprised many, reflecting Arythea's new approach to justice. Some whispered it was Darren's influence, though neither he nor Arythea confirmed it. One evening, nearly a year after the assassination attempt, Darren stood on the royal balcony, watching Caloris's twin moons rise over the transformed capital. New structures rose alongside ancient ones, a physical testament to the cultural evolution underway. Arythea joined him, free from a lengthy council session, her simpler attire a quiet departure from tradition. Thinking of Ashar Verge, she asked, noting his pensive gaze. Sometimes, he admitted, but less often now. She studied him. "Do you regret staying?" "Oh," he said without hesitation. "Though I never imagined this is where that rescue would lead." "Nor I," she agreed. "As a child recovering from that night, I dreamed of finding you, thanking you." But this," she gestured to the changing city, This was beyond my wildest hopes. A good change, though. The best kind, she said softly, the kind that reveals what was always possible, if only we dared to reach for it. They stood in easy silence, the city's lights igniting below. From within the palace, faint strains of human music played on Kaorani instruments drifted up a new harmony born of two worlds. Earth's Senate approved the Joint Research Initiative today, Arethia mentioned. Construction begins next month. That's big, Darren noted. The first scientific collaboration between our peoples. The first of many, I hope, she said, turning to him. Which reminds me, I have something to show you. She led him to a small, circular chamber he hadn't seen before, its walls lined with ancient texts and artifacts. At its center, a transparent case held a delicate plant growing from Kaorani soil. What's this? Darren asked, approaching. The first successful hybrid, Arethia said, pride coloring her voice. Kaorani heatherloom crossed with earth lavender. Our botanist said it was impossible, their biochemistries too distinct, their evolutionary paths too divergent. Darren studied the plant, its blue stems supporting lavender-shaped flowers that shifted from purple to silver in the light of fusion of two worlds. It's beautiful, he said quietly. And resilient, she added. Stronger against blight, more adaptable than either parent. Our agricultural ministry believes it could reclaim war-damaged lands. The symbolism wasn't lost on Darren, a new creation stronger for its union, a living emblem of their collaboration. What will you call it? He asked. Arethia smiled, a rare, genuine expression that felt like their private moments. The botanist suggested soul in bloom after the ancient word hope that hurts. But not forever, Darren said, echoing her earlier words. The pain fades as hope takes root, blossoming into something real, she added. He reached out his hand, hovering near the case, not touching it. From one act of mercy to this, he murmured, 10 years from a choice to its fullest consequence. Some choices echo longer than others, Arethia said. The ones that change us most take time to reveal their impact. Later, as night cloaked Caloris, they stood on a high balcony, gazing not at the city, but at the distant stars, Earth-Ashar verge worlds yet to be touched by this unlikely alliance. What happens next? Darren asked, staring at a nebula's purple-blue haze against the void. I don't know, Arethia admitted. That's what makes it worth discovering. She reached for his hand, her blue fingers entwining with his, a gesture now familiar, neither romantic nor merely friendly, but a unique bond forged in fire and sealed in truth. 10 years ago, you saved a girl, she said softly. Today, perhaps we save something larger than ourselves. Darren nodded, her words resonating deep within him. Whatever lay ahead, challenges or triumphs, they would face it together side by side, neither bowing, both transformed by their shared bond. In the garden below, unseen in the dark, the first soul in bloom unfurled its petals, releasing a fragrance, new to any world, a testament to hope under the ancient stars.